Greetings, everyone. Thank you all very much for joining us today at our inaugural event for the B'Ai Global Forum at the University of Tokyo. We're excited to see over 150 people joining us today. My name is Yukoi Tatsu. I'm an associate professor at the University of Tokyo and the associate director of the B'Ai Global Forum. It is my pleasure to be moderating today's event. While just a few housekeeping matters before we start, we are broadcasting our event on two platforms today, the Zoom webinar and YouTube Live. While our event will be held in English, we'll be able to provide Japanese simultaneous interpretation today. If you're joining us on Zoom, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen to choose your preferred language. If you click on Mute Original Audio, you will only hear the Japanese translation. We will also have two YouTube videos streaming, one in English and the other one with the Japanese translation. The links are available on our PTX page. In addition, for our Japanese audience, we have prepared a short abridged translation of the keynote lecture by Ms. Anita Gurumurthy. On Zoom, you'll be able to find a link to the Google Drive in the chat in a moment. Oh, you see it right now. The link is the same as what you saw on the PTX page, and you'll be able to view or download the PDF from this folder. If you're on YouTube, on the Japanese language feed, you'll be able to find the link in the description section right below the screen. Now, shall we get started? I'd like to invite Professor Kaori Hayashi to give the opening remarks. She is professor at the Interfaculty Initiative in Information Sciences at the University of Tokyo and is our director at the B'Ai Global Forum. Professor Hayashi, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Yuko. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for the nice introduction, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everybody. My name is Kaori Hayashi, and I am the director of the B'Ai Global Forum. And thank you for joining our online symposium titled Gender Justice in the AI Era, a dialogue on engagement and activism. This is a very special occasion for me and my team because it is an inaugural symposium for a project which is called B'Ai Global Forum, which started in July last year amid the spread of COVID-19. So because it's an inaugural symposium, let me first explain about our project. Our project is a part of the larger project called Institute for AI and Beyond, a joint research institute for AI technologies established by SoftBank, which is a Japanese cellular phone company, and the University of Tokyo. Within our project, we are the only unit that explores the theme of AI and technologies from the approaches of social science and humanities. We decided to title our project B'Ai Global Forum. The B represents our goal to focus on the history of discourses and representations before AI and various competing interests behind the development of AI and the structures beneath AI. Along with exploring these themes, our team aspires to create a forum where, together with scientists, activists, and citizens, we discuss how best to achieve a society that embraces gender equality and guarantees minority rights in the era where AI pervades every aspect of our lives. Fortunately, we have been able to attract scientists, activists, practitioners, and journalists to join our mailing list as our supporters. And with this inaugural symposium, we hope to expand our circle further to establish a network of diverse stakeholders in society. Since the start of this institute on July 30th, we have been forced to do everything from recruiting new members, holding team meetings, to preparation works for this symposium online. But thanks to digital technologies, we have managed to overcome most of the difficulties triggered by the pandemic. I think this was one experience that gave me an example that technologies can contribute to human beings in a crisis situation. And here we are today with our honorable guest, Anita Gurumurthy from India, who leads the NGO IT for Change as the keynote speaker. Anita, please allow me to call you Anita. And we found through our internet search that Anita's NGO, IT for Change, aims for a society in which digital technologies contribute to human rights and social justice and equity. It is a mission that overlaps with ours. And we decided that Anita would be the most appropriate person to get the ball rolling for us. It is truly an honor to have her join us today from Bangalore, India. She will give us a talk entitled Towards Feminist Futures in the Intelligence Economy. This title is such an encouraging and appropriate one for our inaugural symposium. Although we are confronted with the grim reality of many women and sexual minorities falling victim to malicious and manipulative algorithms and profit-taking platforms, we do not want to discard hope altogether and wish to keep a sense of optimism so that we can secure feminist futures with intelligence economy and technologies. That is, technologies that serve lives of women and minorities. What's lacking today are good analysis, strategies, plans, and policies. And that is part of the reason our project explores science and technologies from humanities and sociological perspectives. We are also very happy to have Ms. Saito and our dear colleague, Professor Nakao, as discussants for the panel discussion. Ms. Saito is the key person in Japan who promotes STEM studies among young women and trains future female scientists in Japan. She leads an NPO named Waffle, where she develops a forum for teenagers and who aspire to become scientists. In Japan, women take up only 15.7% among the entire number of natural scientists. This compares, for example, with 37% in Norway, 34% in the US, and 28% in Germany. These figures show how challenging and at the same time significant Ms. Saito's activism is to Japanese society. And my dear colleague, Professor Nakao. He is the first-class scientist in the field of networked systems. As a graduate of the University of Tokyo and Princeton, he has been the front-runner in the area of his expertise. But Professor Nakao has a different face. Namely, he not only develops cutting-edge technologies, but he has been committed to sharing his achievements with local communities, including with oyster farmers in Hiroshima, where he himself is from. I am excited to hear about his experience and achievements. So I sincerely thank Anita, Ms. Saito, and Professor Nakao for kindly taking part in this inaugural symposium amid their busy schedule. I also would like to thank today's moderator and my dear colleague Yuko Itatsu, who leads the B'Ai together with me. She has planned and organized this entire event by herself with a short period of time. So again, I am very excited to start this symposium, and let me officially declare the start of our B'Ai Global Forum project. Thank you very much for joining us. And now back to Yuko. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaori, for your opening remarks. Okay, now to our main event. When we were discussing who would be an ideal person to help us launch our forum, we were hoping for a passionate and powerful voice, a compelling voice that communicated the importance of discussing gender in AI and whose intellectual mind would inspire us as we jumpstart our mission. Ms. Anita Gurumurthy embodies all of these qualities, and we are honored and absolutely delighted to welcome her as our keynote speaker today. Ms. Gurumurthy is the founding member and executive director of IT for Change, located in Bengaluru, India. She has worked tirelessly on ameliorating the information technology environment for women in India to ensure their human rights and achieve social justice and equity. We've asked Ms. Gurumurthy to speak for about 40 minutes, which will be then followed by a panel discussion. The title of her keynote presentation today is Towards Feminist Futures in the Intelligence Economy. At this point, I'll ask our staff to start sharing the slides, and I'll pass the mic on to you, Anita. The mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Yuko. So we have our first slide there. Yes. I think it's a great honor and I'm privileged to share this space with yourself, Ms. Saito, Professor Nakao, and others at your wonderful institute. I think that, long ago, I used to be working in a space which brought together the physical sciences with the social sciences. And I think that that is a project that very much is needed for the future if we really have to create and shape a world that is much more compassionate. So congratulations. And I wish this forum a million years of productive work. My second slide, please. That we live in a world fueled by the capitalist dream is quite self-evident. Our aspirations are deeply rooted in a wider social ecology that has been carefully cultivated to meet the global desires of capital. The machines that propel big capital seek a mathematical precision, continuously engineering rewards that colonize newer and newer frontiers. The roots of the subprime crisis of the late 2000s originated in the financialization of mortgage markets, drunk on rogue algorithms that created fictions that had become all too untenable. Since the decade of the 2000s, mathematical computation through algorithmic ecosystems has begun to play God. The feudal lords of today are a closely knit, interconnected family whose social power obtained through data enclosures has given the structure of global capital its highly centralizing contemporary character. Nitzan talks about how capitalism is not an economic system, but a social order. And I quote, "Capitalization is a forward-looking process. What is being accumulated are claims on the future flow of profit. But then, if capital is not tangible, how should its accumulation be measured? The answer is rooted in the relative nature of power. The power that the absentee owner has in terms of control over the social process, and that becomes meaningful primarily against the power of other owners. So this is all about monopoly profits. The bridge that makes capitalism the sociality in relation to which we exist, or the existential condition, so to speak, is the seemingly innocuous algorithm, which enables not just a control of the present by the owners of wealth, but also a capture of the future. Nitzan's simple distinction between industry and business elucidates life in the digital. Industry aims to produce. Business aims to make money. In the world run by big tech and big pharma and big agri, the role of the humble algorithm is to enable the grand project of optimizing revenue at the cost of production, at the cost of anything small that seeks to create to live. We recognize today's algorithmic ecosystems as platforms that are transforming global value chains and restructuring labor markets. As artifacts of social power, platforms not only restructure work, they also refashion the very space of life. They challenge and chip away at the political consensus over social norms, displacing old rules and establishing new ones. This is the intelligence economy on an auto loop that knows more, knows better, and knows deeper on an ever-expanding time-space configuration. Next slide, please. We will focus today on how gender relations are orchestrated in the intelligence economy and its platform-mediated structures of social power. Based on primary research in India with my colleagues, some of who are present at this conversation today, and building on the research undertaken with the wider IT for Change community, this presentation unpacks the impacts of algorithmified work in the platform economy. I will first examine implications for the agency and autonomy of women workers and micro-entrepreneurs who seek economic opportunities through digital labor platforms and e-commerce marketplaces. Offering a feminist analysis of the social power dynamics that characterize algorithmically restructured labor markets, I will argue how we can move away from the present paradigm to one that is radically transformed. Next slide, please. Slide number 4. In the developing world, 90% of the women work in the informal sector, beyond the pale of legislative guarantees. Digital labor platforms and e-commerce supply chains have been seen in global and national policy discussions as presenting a never-before opportunity to these women. Yet, there is little evidence that platformized work destabilizes the status quo. On the contrary, platformization has meant precarious employment without any labor protection, rendering poor women in developing countries extremely vulnerable to the unilateralism of exploitative corporations. Next slide, please. This is slide number 5. I present our qualitative research now, and we go into our first story, the story of Damini. Slide number 6. Damini is a migrant from the rural northeast of India, and she lives in a southern city called Bengaluru, which is the Silicon Valley city of India. Damini works for the location-based platform Urban Company, which provides home-based services ranging from cleaning, home installations, repairs, carpentry, to salon services and massages. Urban Company describes the workers providing these services as service professionals. Its application works by linking these workers to customer leads. Workers need a minimum level of credits to respond to customer leads, and conversely, responding to leads and successfully rendering the service earns workers credit points. A percentage of the credit points are taken by the company as commission. Damini provides beauty and wellness services through Urban Company. During the lockdown, immediately following the pandemic, she returned to her village, but economic necessity has compelled her to come back to Bengaluru recently and resume her work. The next slide. This is what Damini says about her work. The Urban Company manager takes all our details and makes the profile. We don't do it. Earlier, for a 1-hour massage service, Urban Company used to deduct 13 credits, that is 130 rupees, as commission from our balance. Now, that is in the recent months, they're deducting 24 credits, that's 240 rupees. When we ask, they say, our business is expanding and hence we need to increase the commission from 5 to 10%. But we do not know how the price is fixed for each customer. The information stays in the app. We also do not know how the company decides job allocation for different workers and why someone gets more tasks. We just accept what the app sends. We cannot see customer reviews that other workers have given. If we could, we won't provide services to customers who have got poor reviews. Next slide, please. Slide number 8. So how does Urban... Sorry, should I stop? Hello? So how does Urban Company's algorithmified workplace function? So we have the first task here. Sorry. Okay, we have the first task here, and the first is registration. So what you're seeing actually is the workflow, and the workflow is based on the way by which the algorithm controls the worker. So what you're actually seeing is a set of different functionalities that the algorithm performs, and each of those functionalities is affecting the worker in some way. I need to also clarify the legend at the bottom of this slide, and you will see a dark gray where the algorithm is completely opaque. And if it's a white background, that is transparency. And if it's a lighter shade of gray, that is partial transparency. What you will notice is most of the algorithm's functions are opaque to the worker. So the first one is registration. Workers share personal details on a web form and wait for a response from Urban Company. There does not seem to be a guarantee that there will be a response to the worker from the company. The online profile of the worker is created by the platform's management team and not necessarily by the workers themselves. The second is task allocation. Customer leads are allocated to the workers by the algorithm with no transparency as to the basis of such allocation. The criteria for the number of jobs or number of gigs that the worker gets is really not known to the worker. The third is the task performance. Workers are only told the service they are to perform and the address of the customer. Then is the terms of service or payments. Commission is operationalized through a system of credit balances. One credit balance is 10 rupees. The platform sets the commission at a particular number of credits, and each gig request and the work for each gig request, and the worker can accept a client request only upon paying the credit balance upfront. The calculations are not known to the workers. Urban Company offers discounts to customers during festivals, and the reduction in prices of services at this time is squeezed from the workers' earnings. Now we come to rating and reviews. Workers and customers do rate each other, but only workers' ratings are visible to customers and not the other way around. Workers cannot view ratings given by clients and have little knowledge of whether and if such ratings feed into the algorithm. No online rating reporting mechanism exists for workers to create a record that their peers can also view. Then we come to penalties and punishments. Lower ratings automatically trigger a retraining process, irrespective of whether or not low ratings are justified. And finally, the remedy. There is a post facto complaints mechanism for reporting harassment at workplace, and the platform does block customers after investigation if it is found that the worker's complaint is justified. Next slide, slide number 9. Now we go to the second story. We spoke to Sushila, who was running her own business, a boutique clothes store. After the rise of online e-commerce business in India decimated her business, she decided to change careers. Sushila works for Uber and for Ola, a ride-hailing platform that connects drivers and passengers similar to Uber in India. While some drivers may drive exclusively for one platform, others like Sushila drive for several platforms, so they multi-home, simultaneously taking advantage of the purported flexibility offered by these platforms. We also spoke to Yamuna, who just like Sushila works for Uber in Bengaluru. I present both their perceptions. Next slide. I went to the Uber office and took my Aadhaar card. Aadhaar is the Indian government's national ID. I also took the police verification proof. I carried a no objection letter from my husband as I thought they may need it. They took it as well, though they had not asked for it. The company takes a 26% commission. The Uber payment rate for drivers is standard, and even if the diesel prices go up, there's no thought from Uber that drivers should be compensated accordingly. If it is a leased car from Uber, which means that the car doesn't belong to the driver, they even take 3/4 of your earnings away. It can never work out if you're driving a leased car. Next slide. We take up considerable risk to do our duty. Women drivers need safety. There should be CCTV in cars and an emergency call center that women drivers can reach when they drive in the night. Sometimes for 13 kilometers, instead of 150 rupees, the app shows our earnings only as 100 rupees. We complain to customer care and ask them why we have gotten less money. They say this may be because of a network problem, and since the route was not fully recorded on the GIS, the company received less from the passenger. Most of the time, they give us such arbitrary reasons and don't pay us the balance money. Next slide, slide number 12. So how does Uber's algorithmified workplace function? On registration, workers go to the Uber office with their identification, driving license, and vehicle documents. After verification and collection of the national unique identification number, the company onboards them. There's no clarity on how workers' personal data will be used. Purpose and use limitations for collected data are not known. How is task allocated? The algorithm automatically matches drivers to customers, but there's no transparency as to its workings. Drivers speculate that the factors may include ratings or the acceptance or rejection rate. Now to task performance. Drivers do not get to choose their destinations, as it remains unknown until they accept the ride. They have no control over how the task is performed, with the route also being determined by the algorithm and the GPS. Now, this can be problematic for women drivers who may be very far away from home in the night, right? So if they were to be given a choice to pick a ride, perhaps they might pick a ride that's closer home. Now we come to payment. The commission rate is fixed and not sensitive to real economy changes. Real economy changes could include petrol price hikes or the lockdown, for instance. Rating and reviews. Customers can rate drivers based on a number of factors which are not disclosed to the driver. The drivers can see their ratings, but are not told how their ratings impact other decisions in the algorithm, such as task allocation. Drivers can also rate customers, but cannot view a customer's rating before deciding to accept or reject a ride. Such opacity can become a problem in the event of a dispute. And finally, on penalties and punishment, drivers' accounts can be suspended or deactivated by the algorithm, and reasons for this are not often disclosed. The next slide, please. Now I share with you the third story, the story of Jayashree's experience with Amazon Mechanical Turk, AMT. AMT is a crowdsourcing website owned by Amazon for businesses to hire remotely located crowd workers to perform discrete on-demand tasks that computers are currently unable to do. Requesters can post tasks that crowd workers complete for a small fee. These tasks typically take the form of surveys, image labeling, question answering, and other tasks that don't require specialized skills for humans, but are difficult or impossible for computers. Workers have to register on AMT and get their account through which they transact on the platform. Jayashree is a computer science graduate who's been working on AMT for 3 years. Despite multiple attempts, she has not been able to procure an account of her own due to reasons unknowable to her. She uses her cousin's account and transfers half her monthly earnings to the cousin as rent. She's constrained by the need to care for her elderly mother, who used to be working in a garment factory before the COVID pandemic and now who's lost her job, due to which Jayashree is only able to work from home. She narrates a situation of extreme economic distress since the coronavirus lockdown, observing that the higher paying tasks have completely dried up since the pandemic, thereby affecting her income. In 2019, she was making around 20,000 rupees per month. Since the pandemic, she earns less than 10,000 rupees. Jayashree lives in the hope that she can get her own account on AMT someday. However, she's received no information on why her account has been repeatedly rejected and on what criteria it may be approved. Next slide, please. Slide number 14. This is what she has to say. I started with my cousin's ID. I also want one, but I did not get one. The ID kept getting rejected. Then my cousin told me that till I get my own, I can use hers. So I'm using that and continuing. My cousin takes half my earnings. There are other people who buy IDs paying lakhs. So 10 lakhs is 1 million, 10 lakh rupees. 10 lakhs as a number. A lot of people have told me that they give jobs to US workers first and then only come to us. Indians get less work. Only 20% of the available work is for Indians. With AMT's master's qualification, you get better work. But I don't know what basis AMT uses to award the master's qualification. This has happened to a lot of people. Their work will be rejected, there will be no response, their account will be suspended, and then there's no response to emails. The next slide, please. Slide number 15. So how does AMT's algorithmified workplace function? Registration, workers register with their name, address, gender, age, nationality, and wait for account approval. Reasons for acceptance or rejection are not clear. There is a gray market in worker accounts, with registered workers renting their accounts for a share in earnings or a hefty one-time price. Task allocation, the algorithm automatically displays a certain list of tasks for workers. Far from being an open marketplace, the kind of tasks that are available for workers to choose are already predetermined by the AI. On task performance, workers have little agency over the performance of a task and strictly follow instructions from the requesters, are the clients of AMT. Requesters are the clients of AMT. As any slight error can lead to the work being rejected with consequent non-payment. On payment, AMT charges clients a commission estimated to be about 20%. Workers are charged a transaction fee of about 3 to 4% per transaction. Workers cannot easily access dispute resolution for work rejection or grievance redress for account suspension. Worker nationality affects the chances of landing work, and Indian workers cannot bid for all the tasks. On ratings and reviews, workers are given an approval rate based on the percentage of tasks that are accepted or rejected by the requester they perform work for. Reasons behind the rejections can be found out only by contacting requesters who may or may not respond. The eligibility criteria for master's qualification, which is nothing other than a rank or score from AMT that enhances workers' chances of landing a gig, are not clear to workers. And on penalties and punishments, workers live under a constant threat of suspension, with accounts being suspended for no discernible reason, with little option to challenge the algorithm's decision. The next slide, please. The fourth and last story is about Sakshi and Dia, who are with SEWA's producer cooperative. The Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, is a women's trade union, the largest women's trade union in the world, with a membership of 1.5 million self-employed women workers in India's informal economy. SEWA's health team formed a health cooperative, the Lok Swasthya Mandali, that produces and markets herbal medicines. SEWA was approached by Amazon to onboard its cooperatives on a nationwide program that Amazon runs with the government called Saheli. This initiative aims to promote locally made products by women entrepreneurs in India. It advertises itself as an enabler of women entrepreneurs, helping them become successful sellers on Amazon. Next slide, please. Slide number 17. The experiences of SEWA with Saheli, as narrated by Sakshi and Dia, demonstrate how little of this promise has materialized. So I quote from these two women. Saheli approached us as a goodwill gesture. When the storefront was set up, the photographers were selected by them. We did not have a say in how our products were showcased. Products listed on Saheli are not searchable on the Amazon main page. This is a big disadvantage because customers will never go to the Saheli platform to search. They will only search directly on Amazon. The Amazon team had told us that data analytics such as SEO support and data for marketing would be available as part of the package of services. But this has not happened. There is a premium charge for showcasing your products whereby more people will be able to look at them. Those who avail highly priced service packages from Amazon get priority in product search. We did not go for this option. So if you search, our product appears on the bottommost line of the shopfront page. The figures that Dia and Sakshi reported to us about the sales on Amazon are startling. The cooperative sold no product at all in the last 6 months and merely one in the preceding year. Next slide, please. So how does Amazon's Saheli web platform function? On registration, online sellers do not have control over how their business is presented on the Saheli storefront. The decoupling of product searches on Amazon Saheli from the main Amazon platform means that micro enterprises are not competing on an equal footing. The algorithm automatically determines how and where stores are displayed on the marketplace. More visibility requires an extra charge, meaning the algorithm can be purchased to work in your favor, but there's no guarantee of whether it will indeed increase visibility and whether there's a link between visibility and sales. Data and analytics are not presented to the groups that sell through Saheli in a comprehensible manner. There's complete opacity about how product search prioritizes sellers. While sellers and products can be rated and reviewed on the platform, it is not clear whether poor ratings result in penalties of poor visibility. There are indications that sellers who spend more on accessing Amazon shopfront services are rewarded and given a high rating. Next slide, please. So these were the stories based on which we will need to collectively think about the social power of platforms. And we do need to put a feminist lens in doing this kind of a power analysis. Algorithmic management is described as the deployment of a diverse set of technological tools and techniques that structure the conditions of work, enabling the remote management of workforces. In machine learning environments of today, algorithmic management is neither bounded nor predictable. Algorithmic artifacts in such environments need to be understood for both their endogenous and exogenous aspects. Algorithms structure the conditions of work in the platform ecosystems, but as facets of the wider social structures in which they originate and operate, they also derive from and reshape the realms of life tied to work. They wield actor agency to remake society. They are thus the device par excellence in digital capitalism's quest for differential accumulation, what Nitzan, who we discussed earlier, describes as a claim to future profits. The intelligence economy thus optimizes value extraction, not only through endogenous processes that incessantly recreate the relational equilibrium on the platform, but also through exogenous ones in which post-platform relationalities with prevailing economic, political, and cultural domains play a vital role. Using modalities of signification or meaning-making and legitimation of rule setting, platforms deploy algorithms to gain near totalizing social power. Next slide, please. The stories of women we discussed today demonstrate how the material conditions of work are tied to the opaque and exploitative algorithmic apparatus. Platforms normalize such opacity through the myths they build about flexibility and independence. To find work on the platform is to trade off the right to know. In none of the platforms surveyed were workers able to access information about the customer, their ratings and past reviews, or get full information about the nature of the task to be performed. While worker data flows freely to the platform and is made available in limited ways to the customer, nothing is accessible to the worker. Platforms argue that their workers are free to log in and log out as they please, accept or reject tasks that come their way, and have the freedom to go on leave whenever they so desire. However, workers report fearing cancellations or rejections of tasks, as the algorithm may penalize them with a lower rating. The algorithmic ecosystem creates different types of gamified work environments that workers navigate without any predictability about consequences, just hoping and praying that their economic bottom lines will not be affected adversely. The opacity of algorithmic workings precludes the ability of workers to seek redressal and prevents them from challenging algorithmic decisions. Workers must simply resign themselves to the algorithm's omnipotence. The exacting control over workers in the endogenous operations of the algorithm thus erases the ability of workers to navigate relationships on the platform, entrenching a punitive regime that leaves them perpetually guessing about potential actions that can undercut their economic bottom lines. The ever-present threat of arbitrary penalties implies a punishing cost to work agency, resulting in a voluntary servitude, a self-disciplining recalibration by workers of their own behavior to protect their job and income security. In a brutal paradox, the algorithm uses the workers' own laboring data as the very means of disciplinarity or governmentality, squeezing labor surplus to gain market share. While laboring data fuels the platform's intelligence rent, Work itself mutates into an extractive social paradigm that individualizes and disciplines labor power. The next slide, please. Slide number 21. Algorithmic work life also needs to be situated in relation to the exogenous structures of choice, autonomy, and power that connect worker experiences of the algorithm to society's wider social and political aspects. Many Indian states have signed partnership agreements with Amazon to feature products of women producer organizations under the Saheli banner, amplifying statist discourses of women's empowerment and corporate propaganda and social responsibility. Such collaborations of convenience instrumentalize women workers and their economic initiatives. They divert the conversation from the necessary public investments for women's economic participation and the much needed governance of mainstream platform marketplaces. The narrative of e-commerce for women is Amazon's easy ticket for future profits. Cloud majors like Amazon Web Services are desperately wooing Indian government officials to corner India's public sector cloud market. According to the Ken, by 2023, this opportunity could be worth north of $1 billion. In the haloed cross-border value chains for the creation of AI are intertwined the lives of well-educated, mostly small-town women in India, constrained by patriarchal role prescriptions, stagnant labor markets, and increasing household precarity. Platforms like AMT exploit the labor of these women to prepare the ground through mind-numbing repetitive tasks such as image tagging for elite male coders of the North to then take charge. A Hobson's choice confronts these women. Eager to alleviate the household's economic insecurity, these women dutifully enter the virtualized workspace of AMT each night after a long day's care work. Hidden in the gray zone of non-regulation, they navigate an exploitative algorithmic regime, glad for the opportunity to be able to respectably support their family and almost entirely unaware of the oppressive geo-economic and geopolitical factors that legitimize such exploitation. Sourcing crowd work over the internet is an antithesis of the original hope of an internet utopia for peer production. It is the model that the Atlantic has described as the online hell. Indeed, for the women on AMT, the idea of self and autonomy already starts from a relative position of subordination in the patriarchal household, one that makes AMT an attractive work from home proposition, despite its utter lawlessness. Elsewhere, in the context of the female drivers of Uber, we saw households in economic distress mobilize women's labor through a tryst with modernity, encouraging them to break into the all-male bastion of ride-hailing. Whether it be feminized microwork that encourages women's seclusion in the home, or participation in the man's world of driving that endorses their mobility, the algorithmic ecosystem derives legitimacy from the many exogenous shades of patriarchal social organization. It enables platform companies appropriate the labor of migrant women in on-demand work or educated homebound women in cross-border labor chains. It allows states to spawn unregulated economies on the backs of undervalued women. The next slide, please, slide 22. The discursive fiction that hails digital marketplaces as the pinnacle of entrepreneurial emancipation subverts deeper discussion about the intelligence economy as a whole. The survival exigencies that force economically neglected rural hinterlands caught in impoverishment to send their female youth to work in bigger cities, or women to perform micro tasks for a pittance, or rural producers like the cooperatives hold on with hope to the dominant e-commerce marketplace are all consequences of a paradigm gone wrong, a paradigm that data-based optimization rides upon, reinforces, and reshapes. The algorithm acts through its endogenous settings and exogenous social factors, and eventually its workings crystallize into the very structures shaping choice. In the dominant intelligence economy, algorithmic pursuit propels a 21st century global labor arbitrage founded on a collusion of patriarchies characterizing nation states, societies, and businesses that find legitimacy through global policy. This thesis, it needs to be clarified, does not at all assume a passivity on the part of women workers who are indeed leading social change in all domains. Rather, the intention of this thesis is to point out how gendered locations place extreme constraints on women's choices, and therefore to the fact that exogenous conditions of algorithmic life and endogenous ones on platform-mediated work require to be dismantled and rebuilt towards a paradigm of equality found on meaningful choices. Yuko, could I ask you how much more time I'm left with?
Yes, you have about let's see, about 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay, all right. I'll try to finish before that so we have time for the rest of our discussion.
Thank you.
So slide number 23. The stories of women we discussed today point to a near unbridgeable skew of power between the platform and its workers. They also point to how the intelligence economy emboldens social structures of oppression that reproduce racialized gender hierarchies by exploiting women, especially from the global south. The precarization of work that marks platform labor built entirely through algorithmified gaming raises a vital question. How can we move out of platform models built on extractivist algorithmic optimization? The answer to that is we need a new algorithmic radicalism which should inform the principles and norms, policies and practices of the intelligence economy, one that is just and inclusive. Opening up algorithms for political scrutiny is crucial. This can configure endogenous operations of the algorithm, keeping the platform marketplace trained on values and norms continuously monitored for real-world impacts. Two crucial dimensions to realign the platform ecosystem comprise workers' data rights, including the right to algorithmic accountability and the right to explanation, and secondly, gender-responsive algorithmic design to ensure affirmative action on platform workplaces. Data rights, as we know, stretch all the way from processes of data collection, use, storage, and sharing to how accessible it is to workers themselves should they wish to port or transfer their work experience to other job providers or check the veracity of their data or even collectively set up alternative businesses using that data. Design too can be transformative. As women drivers we spoke to reflected, Uber could easily enable a positive gender bias in algorithmic matching. This could be potentially useful when women drivers are out on work late nights. Special filters and tags ratings for women-run businesses on travel platforms could go a long way in promoting economic equity. A positive measure reported to us was about how clients found to have harassed or abused workers are deplatformed by urban company. Secondly, given that algorithms are intertwined with social structures, unless the digital paradigm itself is extricated from its current colonizing trajectory, endogenous restructuring will not go very far. Algorithms must be directed towards new social relationalities, thus nurturing the exogenous conditions for radical change. From provisioning of public marketplaces to compulsory quotas for women producers on e-commerce platforms, legislation for social security nets and workplace health and safety guarantees in platform workplaces, socio-political nudges towards a resignification of algorithmic spaces can transform ideas of labor and ideas of value. But a transformative agenda will need contemplating platform labor along alternative economic logics where efficiency on scale may need to be sacrificed for other gains. New platform marketplace architectures that redistribute value, such as women-owned and women-managed models that are locally embedded and socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable will need to be explored and legitimated. Public investments to nurture such business models and appropriate governance to rein in the power of big tech is vital. Policy interventions are also needed to socialize care. Algorithmic serendipity can contribute to the realization of post-market, collectively organized, voluntary platform-based care arrangements on a societal scale if policy encouragement is provided to such models. The next slide, please, slide 24. I'm not going to really be able to describe this slide very well, but this is really the model we are talking about. What we're talking about is effecting a paradigmatic shift from the current order and its regressive institutional and technological structures to a new one. So if you shift to the left of the slide, you will see the support by institutional transformation and new algorithmic practices and regimes. And such a shift would lead to an alternative economic paradigm, one that expands women's agency and choice. This is indeed a battle of ideas. It is a battle of discourses, and therefore the diagram also carries discursive struggle as a very, very essential part of how we envision change. The next slide. This is the last slide. A global churn is, however, necessary to redirect the purpose of value creation so that it is tied to a meaningful life for all that scrambling for a data-rich planet may not bestow. Stories about the human condition in algorithmified platforms narrated by women we listen to today tell us that we need to strive towards a new subjecthood for the most marginalized, reconstituting computational pursuit as a political activity that is guided by a new institutional ethics. The next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much for your thought-provoking presentation. It was such a wonderful combination of astute theoretical arguments anchored in empirical data from the lived experiences of the women in India. I think our audiences will all agree that there's so much food for thought here with your presentation. I look forward to our discussion in the second half of our event. For the second half of our event, we've organized a panel discussion with our keynote speakers and two special guests. And I'm going to be asking Professor Nakao and Asumi Saito to be putting their cameras on. And I'd like to also welcome our audience to send questions and comments through the Zoom Q&A function. Please let us know your thoughts using that function. And while our time is limited, we have about half an hour, we'll do our best to weave your questions and comments into our conversation. We'll also accept questions in Japanese. I'll try my best to translate them. All right, so it's my pleasure to welcome our two wonderful panelists to this discussion with Ms. Gurumurthy. Let me first start by welcoming Ms. Asumi Saito. Asumi, we know you as the co-founder of Waffle, and a lot of people know you, and that also that the Waffle's mission is to increase the representation of women in IT in Japan. I think there seems to be an overlap between what you do and what Anita does at IT for Change. And I'm just wondering whether you can perhaps talk a little bit about what you do at Waffle, and also perhaps give us some thoughts about Anita's keynote.
Sure. First of all, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me at this place. And it's my pleasure to have opportunity to discuss with Anita and Professor Nakao. Briefly about myself, I'm a co-founder of Waffle, and here we have our vision. Sorry, this slide. Our vision is to close the gender gap by empowering and educating women in tech, especially for middle school and high school students. And so that's our activity. And for the intersection of the lecture right now and our activity is that both we are challenging to the tech industry, which is disproportionately composed by, for example, global north, or in Japan, mainly dominated by men. So we are the minority, and we really need to empower the minority. At the same time, we need to change the system. So we need to work on both side of the problem to overcome this problem. And I think that's what Anita showed at the end of the slide.
Thank you, Asumi. I'm gonna ask the same question to Aki. We've decided to go on a first name basis today, so forgive me, Aki. So let me turn to you. So you're a specialist in computer networks. We're delighted you can join us today. I understand, as Professor Kaori mentioned earlier, that you work with oyster farmers in Hiroshima, and this has something to do with the local 5G networks that you're working on. I wonder if you can give a brief description of the work that you do, and also maybe some initial responses to Anita's keynote.
Okay. I first thought that I should respond to Anita's great presentation today. Thank you, very much for introducing your view on IT. So I'm trying to find the the common ground, between your opinion and what I do now. But until I listened to your talk today, so I thought that ITC, let me call not just IT, but say ITC, because C as a communication. Well, there's always fight between ITC and IT, but what I do is telecommunication research, so I tended to include ITC. But so what I thought today is that I have been thinking that always what we do, like science and technology, do justice to like this gender or maybe nationality sexual problem. But today, I'm exposed to the idea that you just described today, that if you apply algorithm or technology in a known wrong way, so then it's not. I mean, the data analytics and also algorithmic way of giving a job is not working correctly. So it's like your presentation opened my eyes to this problem, and I'm really grateful that you gave this talk to me. So because Yuko, can I call you Yuko?
Yes, yes.
So Yuko mentioned that I should introduce what I do, because I'm working in local community in fishery business in the southern part of Japan. Let me talk a little bit about it using my slides, if you allow me to do that. So, do you like oysters, by the way? So we are working on these oysters. This is a real one that I took from the Hiroshima Itajima Bay. So it's really delicious. I love oysters. But what's happening these days in this oyster farming is that it's a little bit related to your presentation, Anita, because nobody thought about taking ITC research into this oyster farming business, like a fishery business, and especially this is really a rural area. And what we did, we noticed that this oyster is not, farming is just not really doing well these days. Maybe oyster collection instability problem causes the unstable oyster catches in Japan. So this area is known for, the first top rank, top in ranking in oyster catches in Japan. 70% of oysters are caught in this region. But as you can see from this graph, the baby oyster collection ratio is really, unstable and unstable, and instability happened in the 1990s. And people don't know why this is happening. And the cost compensation is like $22 million US per year. So this is, in someday, maybe, I don't know, people eat the raw oysters in India, but in Japan, lots of people love oysters, but oysters may disappear from your table someday. So what we thought is that we can use this, ITC into this fishery business. And let me, find a common ground between your talk and what I do. So you talk about algorithmic restructure of labor market, but what I thought is that we can remove prejudice by ITC, or we can introduce reasoning by ITC, exposing more people to ITC. So what we did is that instead of relying on a traditional way of doing a fishery business, we put sensors in all part of this Hiroshima Bay. And I don't go into the technical details today, but we install a large number of sensors in the base stations and collect them. So this is what we did sometimes you are thrown out into the sea and you risk your life, but install sensors in this region and do some observations and do simulations so that we can predict baby oysters are flown after spawn from the parent oysters. And by doing all these, we thought that instead of guessing by the traditional way of doing the fishery business, which is for many years it's taken over by the many generations of fishermen, but we use data and algorithm and theory and prediction to improve this fishery business. And we even use 5G, as Yuko introduced. I do the 5G telecommunication, but so this way we can give a reason why we can't do or oyster catches are decreasing in time. And so this is our second year of our project. So we don't have conclusion just yet, but these days fishermen came to us and said, very cooperative way that we can do these research together. So, this is, by the way, using the underwater drone and showing this oyster rafts, and also the oysters hang from the oysters raft here. So by all dealing, now let me get back to the point of the common ground. So we thought that this data analytics and also algorithm can remove prejudice by ITC, but we are halfway through it. We try to do this, but today, listening to what you said in your presentation, I thought that we may have to rethink, because just doing data analytics may not solve the entire problem. Maybe we can include this, include the point of how we apply this, research or algorithm or data to do the correct way of, reinstating, for example, fishery business. So that's what I thought.
Thank you very much, Aki. I think, Anita, I want to come back to you and ask about this question that we received from one of our audience members. This is to do with Anita, and also I think Asumi, maybe you can also chime in with this question. So what I found really wonderful about Anita's keynote today, and I think what connects all of you together, is both the big picture abstract ideas of restructuring and doing something for justice, those big goals, but also the very grassroots, local, regional aspects of your actual activities. And I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind. The question that we have here is from Yamamoto-san, algorithmic bias or the gender bias that exists in algorithms. I understand that you think that could be usurped or changed dramatically, radical change to actually bring economic equity. How do you go about actually doing that is the question. And I think the wonderful thing about the testimonies that Anita gave us today shows that there's an awareness that there's something wrong with the algorithm, and also that there's an awareness that they are treated unfairly. And so Asumi, this is where I would like for you to kind of chime in, which is, do you see this kind of public discourse in Japan as well? Like, are algorithms treated with a critical eye? And do we even talk about biases in Japan? So Anita, I'll start with you, and then I'll ask Asumi to speak.
Yeah, I think that it's not very easy in the platform economy to disconnect and start your own thing. You know, that is really possible in a pre-digital age where you can do your own business and you can hope to sustain because the word of mouth, you know, your reputation spreads by word of mouth. But all is not lost. I think considering that the default lives we lead are so entangled with algorithms, we have a duty and we have no choice to reshape them. So I would like to begin with the voices of those two women and repeat those. In fact, one of the Uber drivers that we interviewed actually pointed out, if only at 9 p.m. when I'm going to drive through those dark alleys, I'm matched with a woman customer, I might feel vastly better, right? And that is very easy for the algorithm to do. It's not at all difficult. In fact, you know, she also pointed out another thing that I didn't mention in my keynote. She said that, you know, look, early in the morning and in the evening, when people go to work and come back from work, you have something called surge pricing, which is when Uber, you know, pushes up its prices for the ride, you know, so per kilometer costing, right? Unfortunately, women are not able to avail of that surge price because they have to get their kids ready to school. And by the time it's late evening, the drivers have to shut down and go back, right? What if we actually had a surge pricing hour for the women drivers, which begins a little bit early, so that they can they can take the benefits of the market a little bit before. So it takes a very responsible company like Urban Company's example, which Fair Work Foundation's report also, you know, Fair Work Foundation has this kind of metrics and it evaluates the responsibility, the corporate social responsibility index of platforms. And we found that Urban Company does deplatform customers, right? So if a worker goes to a home to provide a service and then, you know, she is accosted, she's really going to be not having any redressal. So the company takes that on board. So there are many ways, and I don't want to take time, but indeed, I think it is possible both for policies and for companies' own, I would say, self-regulation, responsible self-regulation to kick in.
I agree with Anita. I think there are so many things that company itself can do for self-regulation. For example, Facebook was accused for some human rights problem in the past because they kind of accelerated misinformation over the platform. So if they can do something on content moderation, probably that could like help way easier than people from outside to fix the problem. For the question on in Japan, I think we just started discussing AI ethics or biases in ethics. There are two companies I know. One is Sony, which is the largest one of the largest companies in Japan, you know, and also the AI startup called Abeja. They have a really good community about AI bias and AI ethics. So that's really great. And I think this discussion itself has just started over all over the globally, and there are different resources, but most of the time the problem happens with big tech company, with like big global tech companies like Facebook or Google or Uber, because this problem doesn't happen without big data, and big data is only owned by a large company. So it's really great that fortunately we still have, because in Japan the AI industry is not as matured as US, that means that we still have time to set up the politics or like policies or the system before it really expands.
Thank you so much. Maybe let me just follow up with that. So Anita's testimonies are interesting because they're testimonies from the clients and the users. Asumi, you mentioned the companies that are more interested in AI ethics, but I wonder if is there any practices or people, groups who are trying to educate the public about algorithmic bias? Do you know?
I know one. I think there are a lot of, how can I say? There are like different organizations and they take different stances, of course. So for example, MIT Tech Review, which is really great media for technology, and they constantly publish about AI ethics or AI bias problems on the news. And indeed, this Facebook content moderation story is something that I got to know on MIT Tech Review. So that's one place that people can get educated. And another place is there is this online course called Fast AI. And if you are someone who wants to study AI, you must know this course because it's all free. And it's run by professors in University of San Francisco, I guess. And they are really vocal about AI biases and AI ethics. And they actually started a course called AI data ethics, and that's online as well. So that's another place that people can get educated. But I haven't seen anything in Japanese, so probably that's like a point that we can move on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Maybe that is a place that we need to maybe address. Let me move on to this next question. This is, I believe, Professor Reiko Kuroda, who is Professor Emeritus at our university. She's asking about men who are also exploited by these platform economies. And Anita, I know you mentioned specifically female workers here, but is there an opportunity here for a wider group of people to collectively be involved in activism?
Yeah, the purpose, I think, of any feminist analysis is not to exclude men. The purpose is to understand why and how oppression operates and how exploitation is allowed to exist. So if you're a feminist, then you can very easily discern the levels of exploitation that exist in this kind of algorithmified work relationships everywhere in society. So in fact, one of the educational activities we conduct is for trade unions. So in the past 1 year, we have made a considerable amount of progress in working shoulder to shoulder with unions in order to be able to help them make submissions to the government. Trade unions, especially worker unions of gig workers, they understand their own predicament and they completely understand what they need in terms of social security, what they need in terms of basic labor rights and guarantees. But for them to be able to understand what kind of data rights are needed, they really don't have anybody to fall back on. So what we have really done is, to combine your previous question and this current concern that we should also pay attention to all forms of exploitation. I would like to submit that the ways in which you look at the world through feminist lenses will allow you to do it. So I think that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Aki, I wanted to ask you a big picture question. Is it possible, that local 5G networks can do something different from public 5G networks? And in fact, there's an opportunity to actually correct the injustices. Is there a place, is it an innovation space that can be exploited in that manner?
So we researchers, scientific researchers, we tend to, solve any challenges that are given to us. And I was thinking how to solve this biased, algorithmic biased problem that Anita pointed out today. And I saw, lots of opaque squares in the algorithms that Anita showed today in several companies and workflow. And so one thing is that the first we should get rid of that opaqueness and that make them all transparent. And I'm not sure about how the local 5G or the public 5G, the difference between them can actually attack this challenge. But one thing is the data collection is now we can collect lots of data from various places. So first we can collect the fact in real time, and large amount of data can be provided. So the one thing that we could do using this tool is that collect the real data and then make everything transparent. How we use that data, how we conclude the high level, we derive the high level conclusion from that. But I'm hearing what you guys discussed. Maybe the making everything transparent is not enough. Maybe designing phases is also important. Like taking account the gender balance and also nationalities. All these aspects that are missing from developing this algorithm. Maybe we have to rethink it. We didn't think about this aspect until now. We thought that maybe we can. What we do is can solve many problems. But I think we have to from the design phase, we have to think about this problem. That's what I thought.
And on that note, this is a question for all three of you. This kind of radical restructuring of the biases that exist, or just to correct that bias, is it something that can only happen by regulations and legislations by government, or do you think it's actually possible to change the big tech companies and their ethos? Is that a dream too big to think about?
So can I say a few words for that? So I'm a good example because we the tech people are not very much aware of this problem. What we do is just to develop what thought to be the correct algorithm, but missing this bias consideration. So probably the giant tech company may not be aware fully about this problem. So as Anita pointed out, it's very important to point out these problems in the first place. Then think about how to solve them. Well, that's my response.
Okay, so I just read that recently, maybe 2019, the Competition Commission in Japan had some kind of action against the large e-tail businesses, and they had actually pointed out that there has to be really some kind of scrutiny for predatory marketing with product search algorithms and antitrust use of consumer data and gaming the market. So there is a very big role that institutions can play when capitalism, young capitalism, right? This is a young kind of 15-year-old capitalism, digital capitalism, exactly like our teenage family members who decide that every weekend they will have to go to a pub. So it's extremely hard to really help them make sense of how their profiteering impulses are screwing up the world, right? It's not a rational thing that you sit down and help them talk. So, and neither are they bad guys or anything like this. It is the very DNA, it's part of the genetics of digital capitalism. So I think what's really important is you need standard setting bodies. You need the competition authority to take on a few roles. You need institutional scrutiny of algorithms, and you need to stop trusting companies to make the standards for how they will open up their data, right? Because data and algorithm are very much part of trade secrets, right? And so that entire regime of intellectual property, trade secrets, and all of that, and global control over marketplaces and footprint, and all of that, it's extremely hard to undercut any of that, juggernaut. So it's something that is rolling, and if that speed has to be stopped, you really need to have external pressure, and that pressure is coming. It's coming from workers, it's coming from ex-employees, it is coming from consumers, and it is also coming from national governments. And I think that it is at this time that academics and civil society actors should really sharpen their analysis and present that, so that we lay a claim to a more progressive set of laws for the future, which do not really, not just curtail the power of these corporations, but also bring in some positive affirmative actions for the kinds of experiments that we just heard with the fishing communities. We do need smaller communities also to benefit from policy changes, so that we need public algorithms, public analytics, public cloud services, right? So the EU is talking about its own cloud analytics. So we do need a public infrastructure.
Thank you. Asumi?
Sure. I partly agree with Professor Nakao. I think the tech giant can definitely take a role, and indeed there is AI ethics team in Google and AI fairness team in Facebook. Although I'm not sure if it's functioning as much as we want them to be, but and also at the same time, each engineers have responsibility to these kind of issues. Sorry, let me sum up my thought. So it really, so this type of problem is solved in a different way by different institution. And what I say about tech company itself is that they can creating a biased algorithm or some platform that exploits people. And that's really on the engineer's hand, like each engineer's hand. And even, for example, the company itself has a policy to grow and then make a bigger profit. If engineers just stop doing that, then they can't make it. So engineers' ethics is really important in the scenario. At the same time, for this labor exploitation, I think country or state government or any kind of public sector needs really urgent move on this problem, because it really affects on people's livelihood. So that's another sector. At the same time, people like us or any nonprofit sector can help raise awareness of people, so that people can make voice on the public government, or will raise awareness in the public in general. So I'm sorry, it's not really a cool answer, but
no. Thank you so much. I think what you're talking about, and what Aki mentioned as well about transparency of data, is that maybe there's a way to make, I don't know, some kind of open source programming that is more of a model for a more inclusive algorithm that might exist. I want to end with one more question, and this question is related to education, because I think what you're all trying to do is somehow democratize the technology that exists. And Aki, you're trying to do that, I think, through the local networks. And I think, Asumi, you are trying to do that by making sure that there's more female representation in IT, and therefore an awareness of gender issues in programming and computer science. And I think Anita doing the same thing. IT for Change does such a wide range of things. Looking at the local community, I think it's really wonderful. So my last question is this. What can education do to help solve this restructuring of the IT industry and algorithmic bias?
Okay, I take that question first. So my belief is that maybe in terms of education, maybe we can take students to or making them exposed to challenges. For example, when we do this local community project like a fishery business, so then students are not very aware of these problems exist in the local fisherman business, for example. So then, but once they are exposed, so then this is, I think, a human nature. They tend to think how to solve, how to improve their business by what they have. And the first thing to do is expose people to the real problem and give them a chance to think about how to solve them. So that's the first step. And then, we can give wisdom to what we learned from the past, for example, in my field, telecommunication, but now it's expanding more and more to social problems these days, but we got lots of expertise and also experiences from this solving problem. So we can give them wisdom how to solve them. And today, we talked about this gender biased algorithm, but we're not exposed to that problem just yet. But maybe if we can give this problem to students, for example, they start thinking about how to attack this problem. So I think this is the way that I think.
Thank you. Anita?
I do think that if there's any one social institution that can make change, it's the process of education. And I think that is a very big ask because, most national governments and even state governments are caught up in this fourth industrial revolution, the heady dream of the fourth industrial revolution. So everyone is wanting to open many more colleges, encourage people to take up computer careers. STEM is a very big thing. But I think, I would say that experiments such as yours, to bring the social sciences together really as a very multidisciplinary endeavor, I think those are very important. I also think that public schools, government schools really need to put small data AI experiments in the hands of children and then unpack the experiences. We have worked with urban youth and built data systems that they are self-managing for their water and sanitation management. And through that process, young boys and girls learn to understand how data operates. And then you sit back, and also the example Asumi gave of how in social media, if you set up an account or a campaign, as a group of young people, and when you actually start processing the trolls that come during those campaigns, because you're calling out for equality, and there will be many people trolling you, stalking you, at that time you can sit and analyze how algorithms work. And then through a very personalized situation, this kind of process of consciousness raising awareness, I think our hope is only in that, and also in the changes that mainstream educational institutions can effect in the way in which they think about science and technology.
Thank you so much. Asumi?
I would like to talk from the point of educational design. So right now, education, like even tech education, is designed by mostly men or privileged people. And that's the problem, because that will reproduce the same structural gap in a next generation of tech. So for example, we work on gender gap. So what we always say is that we really need the gender point of view in tech education. For example, when high school class teacher for math or science is women, the students in that class will go for science major more than the class without women teachers. So it's really simple. Like students just get influenced by the classroom setting or even textbook. There is one example that one textbook for information, there is 62 people who were involved in the creation of the textbook, but there is only one woman. And that's, I think, same for other minorities as well. So it's really important to involve a lot of different people, diverse background of people in the tech education, so that we can avoid reproducing the same structural gap.
Thank you so much. I think it's become abundantly clear just how important it is to think about gender justice in the AI era. But alas, in the interest of time, I think we need to stop here and continue this conversation another time. To our participants, please join me in a virtual applause to our wonderful panelists today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also would like to thank all the questions that have been asked. I'm sorry if I haven't been able to address all of them, but thank you very much. We'll share this with the panelists and with our BAI team. All right, so Aki and Anita, thank you very much. You can turn off your cameras now.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you so much. As we close this event now, let me pass on the mic to my colleague, Professor Eugene Yaguchi, who will be offering some closing remarks. Dr. Yaguchi is professor at the Interfaculty Initiative in Information Sciences at the University of Tokyo and is our executive manager of the B'Ai Global Forum. Eugene, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Excuse my background. I'm in my office right now. This is a very short closing remark from a member of B'Ai Global Forum. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Ms. Anita Gurumurthy for the wonderfully inspiring lecture, and Professor Akira Nakao, a very wise colleague of mine, and Ms. Asumi Saito of Waffle for the wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. And thank you to the members of B'Ai Global Forum, above all, Director Professor Kaori Hayashi, and our dearest colleague Yuko Itatsu, who has been instrumental in planning, organizing, and executing everything and turning this event into a great success. So, huge round of applause to my colleague Yuko Itatsu. Last but not least, I want to thank all the members of the audience who joined us today. Thank you for being with us. We are a group that tries to understand the social significance of technologies, especially from the perspective of gender and social justice. Gender, this is the key. This is the key perspective, not simply to explore equity among genders, but equity in the society as a whole. Unless we can rethink boundaries that touch us all directly, we won't be able to pursue answers and challenges in other realms of our lives. So this is only the beginning, and we shall continue with our endeavor. So please join us and share with us your insights and inspiration in the future. Once this pandemic subsides, we hope to have some in-person events, including bringing Anita over to Tokyo, as well as continuing with this kind of online event. So thank you very much once again, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and good night. どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Eugene. As we close, we'd like to give a big thank you to our simultaneous interpreters. Thank you so much. This was, their work was cut out for them with Anita's keynote speech. And we'd also like to thank you once again for joining us at the event. If you have time to respond to our survey, we'd love to hear your thoughts about today's event. We also look forward to seeing you at one of our future events. So I will end with a thank you. Please stay safe, and goodbye till next time.
Thank you very much. See you.